Hello, welcome back to Bella Barista. This week we're going to be talking about how to select the coffee that is best for you. So here at Bella Barista, we are the UK's first regenerative organic certified roastery, and we only roast organic specialty coffee. When you come to pick your coffee, it can be really confusing to know what to even look for or where to even start when you're trying to choose the coffee. You often have the origin on there, it could even be a blend, and there's various flavor notes and other information included. So today we want to break that down for you and help you to decide which coffee is right for you. Here at Bella Barista, we have our 4 mainstay single origins that are available all year round. These are ethically sourced and grown with sustainable practices. We have the Mexico Mixteca, the Honduras Liquid Amber, Brazil Santo, and our Colombia Taruno. Also available, we have our seasonal single origins, which are available for much shorter and limited time. These switch up depending on the season and availability throughout the year, so there's always something different in our range for you to be able to try. Coffee is a plant that is extremely hard to grow. From the moment the seed is planted in the ground, it can take 4 years for the tree to grow enough to have a harvest. So it can only be grown in certain countries with growing conditions, and that tends to be between the lines of the tropics around the globe. Some of the countries have very specific flavor notes unique to that country, which is dependent on the weather conditions that they have, the altitude that the coffee is grown at, the soil quality. Sometimes it has volcanic soil around, or it can be extremely nutritious soil in different areas of the world. And these all impact the flavor of the coffee as it changes the density, the moisture content, and the chemical composition. So when we drink it in the cup, even though most people say coffee just tastes like coffee, it actually has very subtle nuances that can be identified and drawn back to specific country-based flavors. So to start with here, we've got our Colombian coffee. Now, Colombian coffees tend to be very chocolatey with a nice bit of fruity acidity. So sometimes they might have flavor notes of tangerine, or it could be red apple, but it's got that nice bit of balance between the chocolate sweetness and the acidity of the fruit. Then we have Brazilian coffees. Now, although there's some different processes that are coming out which give us much more exciting Brazilian coffees, generally the pulp natural Brazils tend to have really nutty flavors and be really chocolatey, and so they'd be a great addition to have with milk or sugar, or put through your espresso machine, or even have in a cafetiere in the morning. Honduras coffees, they can range because they use a lot of different processes, which we'll get onto shortly, but they tend to be a lot more fruity and a lot more acidic coffees due to the processing methods that they go through. So you can expect a lot more brightness from a Honduras coffee if you were to make it on a filter than, for example, a Brazilian coffee. Finally, we've got Mexicans, which tend to have a very spicy kind of undertone to them, along with a lot of chocolate and nutty flavors too. So not too dissimilar from the Brazil, but because they're grown at the higher altitude, they have a lot more acidity and brightness. So other coffees around the world will have different flavors too. So for example, Indian coffee can often be monsoon Malabar, which is a specific process which uses the weather conditions, which actually brings a smokier, more ashy taste into the coffee, which again pairs greatly with milk and sugar. On the other hand, you have African coffees like Ethiopians and Kenyans, which are grown at a much higher altitude, and so they always have that really distinct acidic fruity taste within them. So in conclusion, from looking at some of our single origins here, the key things that are important is not only the country that it's grown in and understanding which flavors you like, but within that looking at the altitude to see how high up the mountain the coffee was grown. The higher the altitude within the coffee that the coffee is grown at, the more acidity you're going to have, as there's going to be less oxygen for the plant to respire up high at the mountain. So at a higher altitude, it takes a lot more energy for the fruit to ripen. So therefore, when the fruit and the seed does develop, it will have a much more complex chemical composition and have a lot more acids within it. So it will give you that brighter flavor. Welcome to our roastery. We thought we'd bring you in here to take you through the rest of the video and kind of show you some differences between different coffees that we roast within Bella Barista. organic certified roastery in the UK. So as you can see, we have a small range of coffees, and you might recognize some of them from being in our website and hopefully in your coffee pot. And so we're going to go through over here, and I'm going to show you the difference between washed, natural and honey processed coffees. Okay, so without being too cheesy, I'm telling you, it smells absolutely amazing in here. We've got the roasting going on, and I've just grabbed some of our Colombian from out of the roasted bucket, and it seriously smells divine. So this is our green coffee, and it's from Colombia, and this is literally how it arrives to us in the UK. So as you can see, it's the seed of the coffee cherry. So the way that it's processed is the washed process, which means that after they pick the coffee cherries, they take them down to the washing station, soak them for a few hours in some water, and then it just softens up the skin and the flesh and allows them to wash it off and just reveal the green coffee underneath. It has also got a parchment on it, and then it's left to dry in the sun until it reaches this particular moisture content level. Then they'll remove the parchment and then bag it up ready for it to be shipped to us in the UK. This washed process means that all you're tasting in the cup of coffee is the flavors that come naturally to the coffee itself. So it's not got any added sugars, it's not got any added fermentation. It literally is just the acidity that comes from how the coffee is grown. So a high grown washed coffee is going to be really, really acidic, bright and fruity, and it's going to have a lower body and like mouthfeel when you're drinking it. And sometimes these can be really, really delicate and tea-like, especially when they're a really expensive variety like geisha, for example. They can cost hundreds of pounds for a kilo of that kind of coffee. But so in this hand here, I've got our Colombian wash that I just showed you, and now this is our Honduras natural, and you can visibly see the differences between the two. This one, when you smell it, it just smells like grassy or like a plant, but this one, it smells much more funkier and has some almost alcoholic or fermented kind of aromas to it. And you can see from the color here that it has been processed in a completely different way. So with the natural coffees, they pick the coffee cherries off the tree, and then they just leave the whole cherry to dry in the sun with all of the flesh still on it. And then that way, a lot of the sugars and different complex like chemical compounds from the fruit of the coffee go directly into the coffee bean and influence the flavor. Often natural coffees have much more funkier, kind of boozier and fruitier and sweeter flavors to them, and the body will be much, much heavier. Often the natural coffees are really good for like an espresso, or they can be good to mix into a blend with other coffees to kind of give it a bit more body to that coffee, and they often pair really, really nicely with milk. So here I've got the honey process from Honduras as well. So these two coffees are both from the same origin, but they taste completely different, and that is because this natural process has been dried with the whole fruit on, and this one for a honey process is similar, but they pulp off the skin of the cherry and then leave some of the flesh of the coffee fruit on there to add a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of body to the coffee. So these two coffees, this one will have a much heavier body in the natural, and then this one will have a slightly more acidic but still sweet flavor than the natural coffee itself. So the honey process is often used at varying degrees as well. So you might see on packaging there has white honey, red honey, yellow honey, black honey, and basically that depends on how much of the coffee cherry they leave on to the coffee bean. So a coffee that has a lot of the pulp left on it from the fruit will have a black color to it as it dries because it will ferment a lot, and then those that leave just a tiny bit of coffee cherry on there will have more of a white color. So that's where the colors of honey come from. It's completely vegan, by the way. We get asked that question a lot. So as you can see, this roast has just finished. At Bella Barista, we roast our coffee to a medium light level. So if a coffee is roasted really light, it brings out a lot of the acidity in the coffee. and also it has a really high density, so it's not very soluble, and so it can lead to having a really light-bodied coffee as well. However, the darker you roast it, the more you bring out the bitter compounds within the coffee, and so therefore it will give you more of a dark chocolate vibe, more of tobacco, ashy, and those kind of more strong, robust flavors in the coffee. So if you like a really strong coffee, go for a dark roast. If you prefer something a bit more acidic and fruity, go for a light roast. At Bella Barista, we always profile our coffees to try and bring out the maximum sweetness, which is normally in a medium roast, where it balances the acidity and the bitterness to give a perception of sweetness in between. So all of our coffees you'll find at a reasonable roast level. We do have a darker roast, which is our Navigator blend, which I'll talk to you about in a second. And we also have a lot of our single origin coffees roasted a little bit lighter, just to bring out a little bit more of their fruitiness. So we've talked you through a little bit about the single origins that we have, and now I'm just going to explain a blend. So basically what we do when we have a blend is we take different single origins that we already have, and as we're cupping and tasting them, we identify maybe strengths and weaknesses between different coffees, and we find ones that look like they'll complement each other, and then we mix them together in a blend of coffees, and it doesn't necessarily make them taste better, but by bringing them together, it gives you a different coffee entirely. So over here, our four main blends is Aurora, we've got Embankment, we've got Navigator, and we've got Crossfade. So here at the front, Aurora, that's one of our favorite espresso blends for an espresso machine. So it's the blend of Brazil and Colombia, means that you've got the nutty, dark chocolatey vibes from the Brazil coffee, and then you also have the creaminess and the fruitiness from the Colombian coffee. When you mix them together, it tastes so good as a flat white. It almost tastes like some kind of custard or ice cream, and it's got that really nice acidity that cuts through the milk as well. Then behind here we've got our Embankment, which is our staple espresso blend. It's a crowd pleaser, everybody loves it. It's great with milk and sugar, and it's great by itself black, and it's also great as a filter coffee too. So this one a lot of our wholesale customers have as well on their espresso machines in different coffee shops and hospitality businesses. This one, if you're not sure where to start, this one we always recommend people to try first on their espresso machine. So then we have our Navigator blend, and as we mentioned earlier, this is our darkest roast. So this one is a mix of Peru, Colombia, and Congolese coffee, and we pick those coffees specifically because when we roast them a little bit darker, it really enhances their sweetness and kind of pulls everything together really nicely. We say that it has flavor notes of like morello cherry, toffee, and dark chocolate, and so when you make it into a drink, it's got that real strong kind of like coffee kick to it. It doesn't taste weak, it doesn't taste milky, but at the same time it still tastes like cherry pie. It's a no-brainer. And then finally at the back we've got our Crossfade blend, which is a mix of some of our more expensive, more delicate, more nuanced single origin coffees, and we bring them together to create a masterpiece, to be honest. And this one tastes like sojin, dried fruits, and honeycomb. So it's a combination of all of those intricate flavors and fruity notes from all these different beautiful single origin coffees. And this one is Rwanda, Brazil, and Sumatra, which is a really nice mix across fruitiness from the Rwanda, chocolatiness from the Brazil, and again a bright but mellow fruitiness from the Sumatran coffee, which kind of ties it all together to give that honeycomb vibe. So if you're not sure where to start when you're picking your coffee, I really hope this video has helped you to identify the different variables that come into selecting coffees and might help you to understand a little bit more what's on the bag. So I know this can seem like a lot of information and a lot of things to choose from, so I'm going to bring it back to basics and just give you a couple of recommendations that I would choose for different drinks or different brew methods that you might use at home. So to start with, if you wanted to do like a nice fruity filter, something that's a bit exciting and a bit delicate and that you want to make an effort for on a weekend, I would go for something like the washed Ethiopian. It's grown at a high altitude, so it's really fruity and it's really acidic, but it's also a really, really high quality coffee. So it's kind of got a vibe of tea, like the body is really light and it's almost floral. So when you drink this and make it as a filter, it accentuates all of those things, and I swear it doesn't taste like coffee, it could taste like a really nice drink of tea. And so for me, this would be a no-brainer to use for a V60, Chemex, or any other pour over method. Now, if I was looking for something on my espresso machine that was a bit more exciting and unique, I would go for our Honduras Natural. This has got a really unique flavor to it. As you can see, it's banana, strawberry, jam, and lemon tea. But when you put it through the espresso machine, it's just so fruity as an espresso, and it tastes absolutely delicious. So this one is not your everyday espresso, but it's something more adventurous, something to widen your palate, and something for you to taste that you're really not going to taste again. And so this one is just really good as an espresso or a milk-based beverage on your home espresso machine. And just, to me, it's just so bright, funky, and really different. If you're looking for something, say for example you have all of your friends coming around for coffee, or you're making a cafetiere at home, or you don't want to push the boat out, you want something that tastes good black, tastes also good with milk and sugar, and on pretty much any brew method, then I would point you back to our embankment blend, which is the Brazil and the El Salvador coffee. It's got flavor notes of milk chocolate, fudge, and hazelnut. So it tastes really good in any way that you're going to brew it. It's really versatile, and I tell you, it's really hard to make a bad coffee with this coffee. Finally, if you're looking for something you can just throw in your espresso machine at home, it's going to be really consistent. It's going to be great as a flat white with 2 sugars for whoever you're living with. It's going to be great for your black coffee. It's going to be great as an espresso when you're working early in the morning. However you want to drink it, this is our best one for espresso at home. It's our Navigator blend. It's slightly darker and it tastes good with everything. So also with this Navigator being a darker roast, it's a lot more soluble, and therefore it's a lot more forgiving on an espresso machine. So you don't have to worry so much about getting the perfect recipe or getting the perfect grind size. It will taste just as delicious at 20 seconds as it will at 30 seconds or even beyond. So if you don't have time to dial it in every day, this is the one to go for. Whereas with the Honduras Natural that I showed you earlier, that one's a much more picky coffee, and so I would say if you're going to use a coffee like that, you want to spend time dialing it in to get the perfect recipe, because if it's too quick or too slow, it really will make the flavor taste less optimum. So if you want something that's easy for you to throw in your coffee machine and consistent every day, and everyone will like it, I would go for something like the Navigator blend. So I really hope you have found this video helpful. I've tried to keep it concise, as it could go on for hours and hours as I explain the different variables. So if you have any more questions, drop them in the comments below and we'll answer them in another video. Don't forget, like and subscribe. We'll see you next Friday.